Hey everybody, Andy Stickle here. Welcome to the Law Firm Marketing Hacks podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Seth Price, who is one of the founders of Price Benowitz and also the CEO of Blue Shark Digital, which is a digital marketing agency that has done some really big things with lawyers over the last several years. Seth went from a two-person law firm to scaling it up to 40 attorneys and continuing to grow as we speak. It's growing in real time, as he said. So I'm excited to bring him on the podcast. We've chatted a few times at some different conferences, and he's got some really unique perspectives on digital marketing and how to grow a law firm. So I'm going to hop into this interview with Seth right after the intro. Stick around.
You're not just a lawyer, you're a defender of the defenseless. You possess a license that allows you to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. But while you're fighting for others, who's watching out for you? For far too long, lawyers have been fed line after line by big marketing companies, promising the world and delivering nothing. And even worse, think of all the people you were unable to help just because they didn't know you existed. That ends today. It's time to take the power back. This podcast will teach you how law firm marketing really works, how to not only get more clients, but how to get your dream clients, how to save time, how to save money, how to save energy by only focusing on tactics that work so you can grow your firm and help more people, and how to never get screwed by a marketing company ever again. My name is Andy Stickle, and I've helped thousands of lawyers, and I can help you too. This is the Law Firm Marketing Hacks podcast.
All right. Hey, Seth, how's it going? How are you? How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to have you on the podcast. We've talked a lot. Well, actually, not a lot, but I've seen you at a lot of different conferences, and you always have really great things to say. One of the things that I really like about your approach is that most digital marketers are not also lawyers. So there's a couple guys out there that get to see the law firm marketing perspective from both sides. They get to see it from the digital marketing side and also from the side of being a lawyer. And you've really kind of walked the walk where you a lot of what you've done, I'm assuming you've used when you went and grew your law firm from 2 attorneys to 36 lawyers, but I'm sorry, 40 lawyers. But what I want to talk to you a little bit is about, like, in terms of the things that have really attributed to the growth of the law firm from a getting clients perspective. What are some of the biggest things that you would say have attributed to your rapid success over the course of growing your firm?
Well, from my point of view, it's funny because somebody said on a listserv a few weeks ago, or a Facebook group, what's the single most important thing you did? And, for me, I take marketing as such a given, digital marketing, that not that everything else isn't important. We could talk for hours about scaling a practice and putting systems in place and getting an administrator that's not you and having accounting and all that good stuff. But, look, I am in your camp, so to speak, in that digital marketing is so incredibly powerful. That was our secret sauce, for lack of a better word, meaning, we would not be multiple lawyers. We started at the down point in the economy. It was not a great time to start a law firm. The good part was that there were plenty of people looking for jobs, but we had nothing. But digital marketing, focusing on direct response when somebody has a need, being there for them. The analogy that one of the power players uses is that as lawyers, we're plumbers, and that the hot water heater tank explodes in somebody's house, and the spouses are yelling, and the first person who picks up the phone and solves that problem is going to get the business. And that has been the single biggest driving force, which is it's awesome to have great lawyers. And I take that as a given. Not everybody does. But if you can't get eyeballs to find you in people's time of need, what good is it?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you say the plumber analogy, because I tell that to lawyers all the time, especially on the topic of letting your phone go to voicemail, which that's a whole other subject altogether. But, I always say, look, if your toilet is overflowing and you go to Google and you search plumber and you call a plumber and you get voicemail, are you going to leave a message and hope that they call you back, or are you going to hang up and call the next plumber? It's the same,
it's
same type
so,
of thing.
Again, we could spend another several hours talking about intake and conversion, and from day one. And again, I know that a lot of listeners here are sort of like, hey, what are the fundamental hacks? My 2 cents is that there's no voicemail, there's no receptionist. It's a bat phone. It's a cell phone. Because if you're small enough that it's you, or you and a guy, or you and a guy and a girl, whatever it is that there is a cell phone that every new call goes to. And then in a perfect world, your existing clients get siphoned off and they go somewhere else. Or if you're hustling and everything goes to your cell phone. But the idea that as a new lawyer, I remember early on, because I would have the bat phone. That was my job. I'd be standing in my closet getting ready for date night with my wife. And I'm getting dressed and the phone rings and you bring in a $10,000-$12,000 client that helped make your month. And that if you're answering the phone between 5 o'clock on Friday and 9 a.m. Monday morning, there's a wealth of cases out there that the average place is letting go to voicemail, and that margin right there can be the difference. And people say very often, and I'm sure you get this from the agency side, but people come to me, hey, I don't have the money to afford digital marketing. Well, if you just monetized the breakage that's sitting on the floor, you'd have plenty of money to take the firm to the next level in most cases.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. And actually, a lot of people are even surprised when the lawyer themselves answers the phone. It adds a level of personal touch also, on top of the fact that you're answering the call when the other attorneys are not. It's really interesting. I did a video on that not too long ago about, here are some of the things you could do if you don't want to spend money on marketing, but here's how you can increase your your income. And one of the big things was auditing how the phone is answered, and basically secret shopping your law firm. And a lot of times, it comes down to receptionists or whoever's answering the phone just aren't trained properly to how to even take a message, or how to actually deal with an incoming phone call. And that's something that's so important, because I've called clients before and I'll say, hi, is Bill available? To say, no, would you like voicemail? They didn't ask who I am. They didn't ask if I'm a client. They didn't ask if I'm a prospective client. They didn't get my phone number. They didn't get my name. They didn't get my email. They didn't get anything, and it's like just making simple adjustments like that. Like you said, I mean, you never know when that $1 million case or even a $10,000 case is coming through. And, it just makes a huge difference.
I couldn't agree more. There's a whole industry behind it for, again, bringing it back to, here, it is not something that you're going to get and perfect, because you know what? You look at it from your own point of view. If somebody calls and you pick up the phone, great. If your marketing that you're doing, whether it's for you, Andy, or whether it's for a client, that client, as it grows, one person can't answer the phone. I can't physically have a marriage and kids and answer the phone myself all the time. So that's why there's a team. I now have a 12-person team. With each person that I've added, it is additional challenges. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's continuous. It's a continual process of raising the bar, adding some software, monitoring, secret shopping, as you're saying. Once you think you got it right and you think you're on cruise control, it'll slap you down. It is unforgiving. I got to a point where I had a great team. We were in great shape. The head of intake for us was a former double Purple Heart recipient. This guy was amazing, and the team was on full tilt. Well, that generation rotated out. People moved on to other things. Our model is recent college grads, which is a whole other discussion, versus lifers. But we had people turnover, and I was not listening to calls. And Gary Falkowitz is one of the guys who preaches this all the time. Not only secret shopping, but listening to the calls. And I took the attitude, hey, I'm listening from this end, so I think I'm good because I can hear what the employees are saying when they're talking to people. Wrong. We started recording calls, and what we found was things that sound fine when you're walking by the desk turn out to be god awful. A woman is sitting on the phone and she's saying, so we think everything's fine back at the office. Turns out, person on the other end of the phone is bawling about having this major family tragedy, and this woman could care less and was probably multitasking, not really engaged in the conversation. So it is, again, another entire silo that we could dive into. But taking it back to the sort of hacks for smaller firms, I would say it's whether if you're doing yourself great, but secondarily, as soon as you start to add people, it's trust but verify, as we said during the Cold War. Somebody may be great, but they're off their meds. They have a family emergency at home that takes their mind away from it. If we're not constantly policing, improving, and training, it just, then it's too dangerous to hand it to somebody. And you're right, you do have to do it yourself, and that has repercussions for the rest of your practice. So from my point of view, every ounce of energy after marketing, next most important place is make sure the money you're spending on marketing is being monetized. And the first point of contact before anything else is that initial spark where you get to speak to somebody.
Yeah. It's like that analogy where if a ship goes 1 degree off course, you don't really notice it. Everything seems fine, but all of a sudden you're hundreds of miles off course before, and that can really happen very easily if you're not staying on top and actually listening to those phone calls and making sure that people are doing, what they're supposed to be doing every single day. It's something that I mean, every business owner deals with that, I think, but especially with something where, that's the difference of making money and not making money. That first line of offense really with your law firm and who answers the phone.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll tell people, because some of the people listening to podcasts are probably listening and they're like, oh no, they know it. I mean, everybody knows it. I know that, there are times when I know I'm doing great. And there are times when I'm like, hey, I got 2 employees that on the answering side that aren't ideal. There are moments in life where we know these things. But what I would say is the only good thing I could say to you is that if you're making money now and you fix this, you're only going to make more. So when it's perfect, which never really happens, it's harder to squeeze more out of it. But for the average person listening, if they did nothing, forget about all the digital marketing we're talking about. If they just closed that hole in the bucket, that would be significant increased revenue month after month.
We had a client not long ago. He's a social security attorney, social security disability. And he had one of those call trees where it's, press 1 for this and press 2 for that. And I actually bet him, I was like, look, if you get rid of that call tree and answer the phone, have a real person answer the phone for the next 30 days. If your intake does not double, or if your new cases do not double, I will give you a free month of marketing. And he's like, okay. So next month his cases doubled, just because of the fact that it's all about, like you said, that personal touch, just making sure that somebody just answers the phone and then does a good job answering it.
Right.
And it's so important.
Let me give one caveat to that. And I agree, like Social Security is one of those odd areas, which I don't know if you agree or disagree, but it's harder to hit organically with it, with few exceptions. Like people are clicking on the stuff at the top. Like it's one of the weird places where paid has an advantage. Lead gen seems to still work to a lesser extent. But what I have found, and this is sort of like, let's take it back to the small law firm owner, is that if you do have a single phone number, right? So now you have a decision, because you get a lot of phone calls coming in. If you want the new money calls, the ones that are going to help, we're talking right now about trying to move the needle. I am not always opposed to press 1 if you're a new potential client right off the top, and then having a phone tree thereafter. Again, it is not as good as somebody answering live, no argument. But you also have a cost benefit situation where if you put your best and brightest on the front line and every existing call, every telemarketer, everybody gets through, then you're sopping up your best resources and you can't put the time and attention to the bat line. So there are examples where it could work, but if you do it, you want to siphon those new calls immediately, off the top, understanding, and this is one of those technology things, that there are people that may fumble around and not be able to get that one hit, and then you've lost that caller. So everything comes with a yin yang. But I feel like if you're able to somehow, and again, the best answer is it's a direct answer off a dedicated intake number, and that you, as a firm, make sure existing clients don't use that number to tie up intake. But intake gets really, for us, if somebody calls with a sales call, they're like, sorry, this is an emergency, this is a direct line for new clients. I have your number on caller ID. Somebody will get back to you, or here's our email. Thank you very much. I have to go. And that line is kept open, as if it's, something where every single call, as you said before, could be that significant case. And getting culture of your intake group to be like, if this is not a monetizable issue, it should not be on this line. And the phone tree may be the hack that you need to get to the point where you would be able to truly separate it out.
Yeah. And, it's kind of funny because it's like, different solutions lead to different problems, where a lot of times the issue is we're not getting enough phone calls. And then that'll turn into, okay, we're getting too many phone calls that we're tying up our best resources. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's always another problem that you have to solve.
And I've never heard, said, yes, that is it. And that each piece, one of the things I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm going to go a little ADHD on you.
Sure.
Web chats. So back in the day, chats came up. Got to do chats. We have moved away from it on mobile. I think it's a distraction. I don't like it. Google had a while said, hey, don't put something that blocks everything. They were going to penalize you for doing that. But this is the piece that I've never, just an example of consequences. Chats are good. We get cases through chats. It's there. But are you angering any people with a chat popping up and they're like, I'm going to move on? I think people are more used to it now, but depending on how aggressive the chat is, you can end up sort of giving a bad user experience and somebody could leave you because of that. Whereas, it's not an easy to measure thing, so that everything you do, in this case, you get rid of the phone tree. Well, now your intake guy is tied up with everybody calling with medical records. That isn't what you want the intake person dealing with. Want to get your thoughts, examples of that, where you do something where you say, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but there can be a negative consequence on the other end.
Sure. Well, because we do chat for our clients, but like you said, I don't like it for mobile because first of all, we found that a lot of people don't even use it on mobile because what we do, most chat boxes, it pops up in the bottom right corner. And I think that as long as it's not intrusive, people kind of either they see it and they'll get, it'll kind of empower them to ask a question if they weren't otherwise going to pick up the phone. And sometimes we can turn that into a phone call. But yeah, for chat, it's like, I see what you're saying. What we have found though, is that it does sometimes get those people that wouldn't have otherwise picked up the phone. And we've got a cool feature on our chat boxes where if somebody asks a question, we can say, oh, that's actually a good question for the attorney. And then once we kind of qualify them, we say, would you like us to connect you to the office right now? And they can give the phone number and then the chat operator will actually connect them right to the office. So that's pretty cool. But in terms of if it's turned off clients, I don't know that I don't know that we would be able to measure that, to be totally honest with you. That's something that we haven't. Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's my point. It's sort of like it's a tough thing to balance because we do things, we put our heads down, but there are negative repercussions potentially, whether it be with staff or with potential clients. Going down this rabbit hole for a second, again, going back to the idea of hacks for people who are trying to sort of move the needle. In the market, there's everything from very expensive chat companies down to some not that they're not all overseas, but some that are, not no brands that are rather inexpensive. Have you started to play around with any of this AI stuff? Because I was kind of poo-pooing it and I just demoed one, and I'm not about to move my entire firm to it, but for somebody with a single area of practice, which my firm is not, but if somebody with a single area of practice, I was just blown away with the ability to get, because for me, the whole idea of chat or any intake is to get a phone number. Nobody's signing up as a client without a phone call, right? Correct. We need to get them on the phone, and that's the purpose of chat, just to get me a freaking phone number. That's all I care. Most chat companies, whether they say it or not, are now run out of the Philippines. Have you played around with any of this AI stuff? Because it is getting so freaking good. Again, I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but just curious if you've seen anybody doing that.
I have not yet for law firms yet, for my clients. I do a lot of, I use ManyChat all the time for myself. Because I get tons of messages just on a regular basis to the point where I can't keep track of it all. So what we do is we do all of, anyone that messages my page goes through a chat bot. Anyone that, when they buy certain products of ours, all of our terms and conditions, all of our onboarding, all that stuff all goes through chatbots now. I haven't yet used any AI for our clients yet, just because of the fact that with our chat operators ask some specific questions. And, the goal of the chat operator is literally, first of all, do they fall in the correct practice area? Are they in the correct geographical location? Get their name and phone number. That's like their only goal.
No. I get it. And that's why, this is sort of me sort of in a transformative moment of sort of thought, because we do have that. The chat people come with some risk. Somebody starts going down, somebody starts asking legal questions. They start saying stuff. Are you at the firm? This and that stuff where I don't really want them saying anything. I'd like them to be, and what I have, again, it is whether it's there or not, or whether we're ready to adapt it or not. But I've seen, like, for instance, on your Facebook, or other people's Facebooks, the use of these bots, as we have more specific things where you're like, it's an injury firm, where did the injury take place? If it's not an injury, you don't want to deal with it, and now you're like, have you got medical help? If you know the 10 questions you want asked, the fact that this is being done, and this is the piece why I think it could eventually usurp the live chat person, is depending on how your chat place staffs it, it may or may not be immediate response. We all want instant gratification. You were talking about the water heater and about the overflowing toilet before. If you can get an instantaneous chat response, that is something that's like, oh wow. Even though, and so it's one of those things I've been watching and curious to see whether or not, for me, it's frustrating in having grown a firm, because when you have multiple areas, it's much harder to utilize that, because there's so many different things that could be coming. But for a website that we have for a client, let's say, where all they do is SSDI, were you already turned down? There are 4 or 5 questions, and that if you can just get through those 4 or 5 questions with a phone number, that's a pre-qualified lead. That's as good as it gets in life.
Sure. So now that you mentioned that, we actually do that. And it didn't even register to me that this is what we're doing, but we're doing something with diminished value cases. Now, most lawyers or most PI guys don't care about diminished value, which is property damage, right? But what we kind of realized is that there's people out there that have these diminished value cases that everybody that has a diminished value case has been in a car accident. So we figured there's probably some injury leads in there, and turns out that we're right. So what we do is we run these ads on Facebook, and we've done this in Georgia, we've done it in Florida, and we're currently running it in Indiana. And we run these Facebook ads that say, did you know that if you were in a car accident in the last 2 years, you still may be owed thousands of dollars by the car insurance company, even if they've already paid to repair your car, and diminished value is different in every state. But in Indiana, the particular campaign that we're running right now, what happens is they get taken to a quiz, and the quiz is on ClickFunnels. And basically the first 3 questions are trying to determine if they qualify for diminished value. So the first one would be, do you still own the car? Or are you still in possession of the car, right? Second one is the car a lease? Third is, was the car your fault? Or sorry, was the accident your fault? And then the fourth question is, were you injured, right? So depending on their answers to the first 3 questions, they're either going to get emailed a cheat sheet that teaches them how to claim diminished value, or they're not. If the answer was, were you injured, then they get taken to another form that says you may qualify for additional money for lost wages, pain and suffering, medical bills, all that type of stuff. Enter your information and an attorney will contact you right away. So we are doing that, and we're getting cases out of it. It's actually really, working really well. So I could definitely see how you could just take that, because this is basically it's just a quiz on a website, but you could certainly do that. I mean, you could even do that using ManyChat. But yeah, that type of AI would be pretty simple to do. The one thing I would wonder about is with like ManyChat, for example, or if it's actually a chat, people can actually ask questions. And I know with ManyChat, I don't think that there's a way to set up responses when people ask questions. I think it's basically, it's all clicking, so it's like you click yes, click no, click whatever, and then enter your information. Which companies?
It's happening. And I guess it's,
yeah.
Again, as I've grown, I love looking at what's coming next, but I generally wait to see how it plays out. This is not on the digital side, but on the marketing side, software, new case management software. I'm like, look, I don't want to be the guinea pig. Get the bugs out, come back to me in 2 years. On digital marketing, I'm the opposite, which is, hey, if I can figure out how to put 5 stars next to mine or my clients' websites in the search results, I want to get that, because in 6 months, either everybody's going to have it or Google's going to wipe it out and not allow it. So there are all these different, I feel like on the marketing side, I want to be first and ahead of everybody. On the operations side, very often I'm like, I'll wait to see how the market reacts, because, the chat box is not going to like triple my revenue, but it could be just a great user experience and maybe incrementally improve stuff, but not enough that I want to risk what's already working.
Yeah, yeah. And, Facebook is already using chatbots a lot for their customer service.
Absolutely.
When, for their Facebook ads. And I kind of look at it as like, if Facebook, because I've kind of gotten annoyed with Facebook's chat, their automatic chat for customer service. And I kind of look at it as, if Facebook hasn't gotten it down yet, then the bugs aren't worked out.
No, and that's, it's funny. Yeah. I'll go now. I'm going to go. So we go from easy to sort of more difficult. But a lot of your listeners probably have had a thought in their mind talking about trying to be ahead of the curve was AMP for page loading, and it was familiar. Anybody who's not familiar with it, it was a mobile. It is a mobile protocol that allows for pages to load very quickly, usually a less aesthetically pleasing page, although that's improving, but used by publishers with massive amounts of content, so that on mobile you can get, if you're like The Guardian or the New York Times, you can get your pages loading very quickly. So lawyers are like, okay, load time is really important. Let's take a look at it. And there was a lot of pressure, and one of the big players in the legal space actually put their websites and blogs on it. And I was out at PubCon, this is not this year, but prior year, and the experts were sitting there. This is the guy who's on stage, who of all the people at PubCon, he's the guy they look to as the expert on AMP. And he brings 4 case studies of 4 people he's worked with, major publishers that you would know the names of, and 3 out of 4 screwed it up. And I'm like, look, they're much more complicated sites, but I'm like, if these guys with all the resources where AMP is like a must-have, actually have their traffic tank because wrong canonicalization, et cetera. Like, I don't want to unless Google says you have to do this, I'm going to wait as long as possible, because I'm seeing the big boys screw it up. I'm certainly not going to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and not only that, like I don't think anybody's really gotten it right. There's a Facebook plugin that you can use a WordPress plugin. But you have to go in and like actually change the coding of the plugin for it to work. Like, nobody's really seemed to have gotten it right. It's weird.
Well, and it's like, look, at some point, once it becomes standard, great. But we spend so much time to build our traffic into with content and links, and watching that curve and watching it go up and to the right is the goal, and then take a risk with something that's not fully transparent, with all sorts of, hiccups that could tank that traffic, just seems like way too big of a risk to me.
And what's funny is that the reality is there's no magic bullet. What I've found is that even just like doing my own marketing, where I'm doing marketing for my agency or marketing for myself or my courses or anything, I can't really attribute the success that I've had to one specific thing. It's kind of more that I've just done a lot of stuff. And I've got over 400 videos, I think, at this point on YouTube. And I can't say that one video has really set me apart from anything else, but it's just, I've done a lot of different things and I've tried a lot of different things. And it's kind of like the culmination of everything. When you combine everything together, something works, just because of the fact that you've got so much goodwill going for you, so it's like a chatbot or something like that, or even AMP. If it's done correctly, it will enhance what you're doing, but it's not going to be the magic bullet that's going to fix everything, because there's so much to marketing and internet marketing, and that there's too much for just one of these solutions just be the answer, you know?
Right. But I would also caution that, okay, so you've done a great job of getting your personal brand, whether it's the agency or whether it's the coaching, whatever, you branded yourself very nicely through Facebook to the legal community.
Sure.
I think that we've seen this in a generation before you were sort of big on Facebook. There were other sort of big, sort of funnels of courses to get people to seminars that were used very effectively in legal, and people like, oh, well, if they're doing it, they could do it for me. I think the one thing lawyers have to be careful about comes back to the idea that for most of the B2C lawyers listening, meaning business to consumer lawyers, search, whether it be through paid ads, whether it be the 3-pack or whether it be organic, is still where you want to be. And that if some lawyer did what you do, where they became ubiquitous on Facebook, could it get them cases? It could, but probably is not as good an ROI for them compared to when somebody has that specific need searching. And it's interesting, it was at the CRISP conference, and Gary Vee was talking, and he's talking about at some point search will be relevant and it'll be brand. Well, great, that may happen down the road, and I'm not disagreeing with the premise that will eventually happen, like a Yellow Pages at some X period in the future. But for most of the people who are there, if somebody is able to take the resources they have, whether it's through paid or whether it's getting organic to pop, but to get meaningful traffic, that for them is likely to be different. And the difference between, as a marketer that I am or you are, from that side, that what we see work there doesn't always convert as well to the person looking for the B2C customer.
Sure. And what I always tell lawyers is that the internet is an ecosystem. So it's kind of like they've been saying for years that social is going to have a direct impact on search. And I don't think that we've ever really seen that. But like what I do, like when I create my content, I try to recycle my content as much as I can. So I'll record a video, and then I'll post that video on Facebook, and then I'll post it on YouTube, and then I'll turn it into a blog post and get it on my website. So like, it's like you create that content and then you try to get it everywhere. And then especially when you use that content and then you put it on YouTube, and then, because YouTube videos will appear in Google searches. So if you're recycling content that way, and then if you're also taking that video and then turning it into a blog post, and now you've got a blog post on your website with that. So it's kind of like, and that you are right in terms of search really being the dominant way that people find lawyers. But what I try to figure out is like, okay, so if everyone's going after the same thing, like everyone's going after the keyword personal injury attorney, right? So that's why you're paying $200 a click on PPC. And then, it's so hard to get into the maps, and then it's so hard to be number one organic for those terms. But there's so many other searches that are happening for personal injury attorney, for keywords that are related to personal injury attorney that basically indicate that somebody's looking for a personal injury attorney or need a personal injury attorney. So how can we also put ourselves in front of those keywords? And I think that's kind of what I mean where like doing a lot of stuff, because I really do tell lawyers that they really should be creating a lot of content and providing a lot of value, just because of the fact that, like, I look at it like it's fishing, so if you're fishing and you got one line in the water, maybe you'll catch a fish, maybe you won't. But if you're fishing and you've got 500 lines in the water, each one of those lines being a different video on another subject about criminal offense or personal injury or whatever, whatever your practice area is, then you're much more likely to be found, whether it's someone finding your YouTube video through a long tail search, or the blog post that you wrote through a long tail search, or, somebody shared your video on Facebook, or even if you ran like Facebook ads or something like that with those like engagement ads for those videos. And I think that's, so I think it's an opportunity for lawyers, just because of the fact that not a lot of people are doing it, and the ones that are doing it are having some pretty good luck with it. But it is a long-term play. It's not,
right.
It's not necessarily yeah.
And I think it also depends on who you are, where you are, what type of practice. Meaning, let's say, I think my favorite example, like in New York, Jerry Oginski was on video before everybody else. He built a library. He's built himself a niche in a large market. He's probably gone beyond New York to national with video going deep. I guess what to me there's a lot in this industry where people chase the shiny object. I'm going to make my money on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the hot thing is. And to me, for many of the people listening who are in tier 2 or tier 3 markets doing B2C law, that there is an opportunity that if they just did the fundamentals, yes, creating 10 videos for the things that they want cases from, that those can slot in. As you said, sometimes it might come up in search, even if it doesn't, transcribing the videos, putting that on the web page, following the basic fundamentals outside of the hyper competitive markets can get you ROI rather than just a bunch of stuff and hoping for it. So that I'm all for experimenting and trying new things, but it goes back to the first thing we talked about today, which for me, digital marketing, search-based in the B2C market, that if people are able to keep their eye on that, almost like with an investment portfolio, some percentage that needs to be in let's say mutual funds or something that's sort of solid. You want to take some percentage and go buy individual stocks and shoot for the moon, great. But that the idea being that there is an eye on where the corpus of clients online are, rather than hoping that you're playing the long game, and that before you were sort of on the scene here, we were big in the legal circles on Google Hangouts, and there were entire communities, and people went all in and had tens of thousands of followers, and it was freaking awesome, and then it disappears. So to me, we've seen an amalgamation or a sort of a centering where we know search works. Now let's try other stuff, but keep an eye on, it sounds like you're repurposing all the videos you have. And again, your personal business model doesn't rely upon search because you've built a community, but that's much, much harder so a B2B lawyer, if there were let's say a circle of general counsels online that they could target, you found a circle of lawyers. If you could find your tribe and then market to them, great. But otherwise, if it's consumers and that consumer could be anybody, I feel like people take their eye off of search. Thank God for myself personally in my own market. But what I love helping clients with is, hey, if you're going to have X amount of resources to spend, yes, you could shoot for cool viral videos and it might work. But I know that search does work, and I want to double down on that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I'm really adamant about creating stuff that you can use multiple places, so that because you don't want to be doing a lot of work just for so that's why everything that I do, you can also use for search for that purpose of generating the long tail search terms when someone searches for whatever those long tail keywords are that are related to the practice area. But you're right. And that's something that where I disagree with Gary Vee, where he'll talk about a lot of things like, well, you need to be the number one guy on TikTok or whatever the new things are, or like Snapchat or, and it's like, I think that again, it comes back to, let's go back and see what's proven, like we were saying with the chatbots before.
And with all due respect, mad respect for Gary Vee. He's done amazing stuff. He's been ahead of the curve. I would argue that at his presentation at CRISP, which was incredible, it fell flat when he pivoted into legal. Ironically, he does an annual meeting down at the football stadium in Fort Lauderdale, and he does it for a bunch of different industries, like real estate and I don't know, but 4 or 5 industries not legal. And I felt like he did not he's a genius, and he does stuff at a macro level now, and nobody's gotten rich betting against him. But I believe that if you followed his advice right now, for legal, it would not serve you well. Now, it's like anything else. When will that thing happen? His argument is search will be like yellow pages that will disappear at some point. Well, my attitude is I'm riding this wave as long as it's there, and that yes, at some point it's not there. But again, let's take back to the average person listening to this podcast. They don't have the resources to brand, which is what he's advocating for through TikTok or Instagram or whatever. If yours is a widget that could go out to the world, great. But for most of us, we're playing for the county, maybe for the region or the state, and that you don't have the eyeballs on these areas, and you have to divide and conquer again because there's age issues. If you're an SSDI lawyer and you're on TikTok, that's just, one demographic may not have a single person over the age of 30 on, so it's like
exactly
thinking about where are you fishing and does it make any sense? And I'll leave you with this piece, which is sort of one of the most, that I've struggled with. So I built my firm on criminal. I started with a buddy of mine from college and law school who's, risen to be one of the top criminal guys in the country, teaches up at Harvard Law, he's really badass. And one of the things that I noticed was, look, we need people with money for our practice. Now we've layered it with some people that we have lower dollar, medium dollar, and higher dollar lawyers. But bottom line is somebody has to come out of pocket and not go to a public defender to choose us. Right. That means that if we go to a place that people don't have funds, it is going to be much, I can't get the ROI that I need. And so people, early on, try Bing, Yahoo, because you get cheaper clicks. That may be, but who's on Yahoo and Bing, and it's generally not the savvier people that have made a buck in life. So that if you are at a place where there are eyeballs but without affluence, and you're in an area that needs revenue rather than on a contingency basis, you have another issue that you may be successful in finding people in need but without the resources to pay.
Yeah, for sure. Rule number one is you don't sell to broke people. That's
unless you're SSDI, PI, or workers' comp.
Yeah, unless it's contingency. Yeah, and then
that's part of it. Like knowing what you're like. That is
know your audience.
Know your audience, and remember that if you aren't a contingency lawyer, you really can't sell to broke people, and you better find a place with some affluence. Yeah,
exactly. It's actually, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. That was a whole other thing I was going to go down, and I'm not even going to go there. So, all right, cool. So we're coming up at about 40 minutes here on this. Let's. I want to get a couple just rapid answers from you. Now, if you had to start over today, what would you focus on? If you had to start your firm over, what would you focus on right now? Maybe the first 6 months, and then like the first year.
Well, I would say that I feel like it was accidental for me, but the accidental is something that I think is still a good thing, that focusing on a niche helps. We finding a market, fish where people are not. So if you are in a tier A market, finding some land outside of the city and putting your stake on the ground. Like you may have your office in downtown Miami, but finding something far enough out into the suburbs that the major players don't have a physical office presence. So I think a combination of a focus of type of law and then finding geography with less competition, that 1-2 punch is what I see working with people coming out of the box today.
For sure. Yeah. And I think finding a niche is really big, especially in a crowded market. I mean, like we tell lawyers all the time, if you're a new lawyer in Atlanta and you would do personal injury, well, niche down a little bit, try to go for like motorcycle accidents first, or construction workers or something like that, where basically you can really kind of speak to them and target them and kind of own that niche rather than trying to go up against John Morgan and be the number one personal injury attorney.
No. And look, I literally had a conversation like this with somebody yesterday, and I was trying to explain there's no easy answer to it, because I think it's almost like a yin yang. And I know we're not going a little deeper than you probably want for your rapid fire, but I think it's an important point, which is you have a decision to make when you come out of the box, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, hey, let's say you decide to niche really well. Motorcycle is no joke. It's not like John Morgan's ignoring motorcycles, right?
Sure.
So still wants that, and he is the authority of Morgan & Morgan, and he's getting motorcycle cases. So if you go all in on motorcycles and you get like Atlanta motorcycle accident lawyer, yes, Google still gives advantage there. You're showing the world, I want that. The downside of it is it's harder to pivot out of that. So there's a balancing test. Literally had this conversation. Somebody didn't want to hear it from me, which is if you go too deep on the niching, which helps you get there, it's going to be harder later to come out. So you may want something where you're going to say, okay, I'm going to niche, but I'm going to have a branded URL. I'll have the niche all over the homepage, but I'm going to give up the added advantage of having it in the URL, which is a big advantage, because I don't want to do this only for the rest of my life. And once I have one area established, it's so much easier to pivot if it's a generic brand than if you've already taken everything and gone so far all in. But you're sitting in Miami and you got to put bread on the table. So, what are you going to do? So if you don't niche all in, it's going to take you longer and harder to get there. While on the other side, if you do, so that's just a decision everybody has to make personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else I've been doing lately for some clients is we've been not necessarily going into a specific niche like motorcycle accidents, but into a specific type of person. Like we recently started doing one that's talking to parents of teen drivers. So what you're doing is you're basically becoming an authority to parents who are teaching their kids how to drive and making sure that you're not talking about accidents, but you're talking about here's how you make sure that they avoid accidents. Here's the things that I see in my practice, and that maybe makes you a little less susceptible to that becoming the motorcycle accident guy, you know what I mean? But it still kind of allows you to focus on something so that you have one specific group of people that you're really kind of laser focused on. And then from there, you can kind of go out a little bit. But yeah, no, I agree with you.
Look, I hear this, and this is not, we've never talked about this, so I'm not taking this from other people that have talked about it. The problem there is, okay, so some people like what you're doing. Yes, maybe they'll remember you when there's an injury or an arrest or whatever, but it's such a long-term play. Two questions. One, will it actually work? And two, will you stay with it so that if it would work, that you're continuing to stay with that, and it's not the analogy to the blog that you said, hey, I'm really excited about blogging, and then like there's one blog post 2 years later. So A, it's staying with it, and B, do we know that if you do this over time, it will in fact make you enough money? Or you know what, you're gonna get 2 nice cases from that over the next 2 years, but if you had spent all of that time going after bicycle accidents, because that really isn't even touched by John Morgan, and you're a bicycle enthusiast, that you could own that space. And there's, I think, we all want to say it's a long-term play. The question is it, and history is written by the victors, but will that long-term play work? And do you have, if you do play it out and you do stay with resources, will it actually make you enough money to make it worthwhile? And then secondarily, in our ADHD culture, will you stay with it long enough?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's why I always say, like, before I talk to anybody about this, my first question is, are you passionate enough about this that you're actually going to want to do it? Because with the stuff that even with my stuff, if I wasn't passionate about marketing and didn't care about marketing, there's no way that I would be where I am right now. That's the first thing, is that people have to be realistic with themselves. Like, are you going to go down that, and do you actually care enough about that topic to stick with it? And if the answer is yes, then it can be really successful. I think a lot of times when people see things like that, like they say, I want to be the brain injury guy, but they're really not passionate about brain injury. They just know you can make a lot of money in brain injury. That's when they know it's not going to work, or that's when it's not going to work.
I agree with you completely. Like, we all do what we like to do. You and I geek out on the marketing side. I do that. Yep. I wish that I could go to the trucking seminars and network myself. I'm a good networker. I'm sure that if I sat in those trucking seminars, I could be the regional trucking guy from my area. I have no doubt. But it doesn't drive me. And I'd so much rather geek out at a PILMA event with you, where I'm sort of learning and thinking and active. And would I make more money if I had sat every 6 months in the trucking seminar and build it? But we do, and I say that for whether it's blogging, whether it's video, whatever it is, if you do what you actually like and you keep focused, that assuming that there's an eye on how you make money. So if you do something you like, and let's say it's cutting edge social media like TikTok, it may not make you a buck, but it's like making videos and you're like, okay, I'm gonna take these videos, but as long as I have an eye that I'm gonna look at it from an SEO point of view, fine. Leverage what you like, because frankly, if you just transcribed all your videos, boom, you have content. If you get your videos placed in different places that link back, you can utilize it for other things. But if you try to pretend to do something that you don't enjoy doing, or find somebody to do what you don't enjoy, it just doesn't happen in my experience.
Yeah, it's really, really easy to do what you want to do. You know what I mean? But it's really, really difficult to do what you just like. If you just absolutely dread talking about brain injuries, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how many calendar alerts you set. You're not gonna record videos or write blog posts or do whatever you need to do to become that authority. You know what I mean? Same thing with, like you said, with trucking accidents. Even though you can make a lot of money on it, if you just know that you're just gonna hate doing it, it's not gonna happen. Because people can see that also. People can tell if you're passionate or not.
Couldn't agree more. And like, another conversation for another day, as you start staffing up with employees between two companies, we're well over 100 employees, And I find there are people that come in and they just don't want to do something, and I could tell them to do it. I find that you either have to rotate them out of that spot or move on with the employee, because if you don't have people who are motivated to do whatever you need, and the worst part is, and I don't know if you've experienced this, is you have an employee doing something and the need changes. It sounds awful because you would think, okay, well, the need has changed. I need you to do X, Y, Z. We see more breakage over, well, that wasn't what I was hired for. And it's crazy to me because I'm still paying the same salary. It's a nuanced difference of what we were doing, but there is a buy-in factor. And that when that doesn't happen, being cognizant of that, because just like you or I, if I hated shooting videos and you said, hey, it's time to shoot your video, and I keep blowing you off, telling you I'm too busy, the same thing seems to happen, that people find everything that they need to do at work except for what you need to make money, if it's a pivot from what they thought they were brought in for.
Yeah, I do that too. There's plenty of things in any given day that I just don't want to do that I have to do. And, it's those are the things that at the end of the day are still in my to-do list, because I've somehow made up excuses of why I can put it off till later. And I'm sure most people are like that, but it's really interesting. All right. So last question, and then we're going to wrap up today. If you had to start over, what would you avoid doing? What are some of the things that you would avoid if you had to start your law firm over again?
Wow. I would say, and it's along the same lines. I would say, getting the accounting piece in place as quickly as possible. Getting, for me, again, something I don't love QuickBooks or numbers. And so making sure, I'll answer it this way. Identifying what you really don't like to do based on our last conversation here, and making sure that you hire for that, and then B, figuring out what you do enjoy as you start to grow. And even though you enjoy it, if it is not the best use of your time, then layering people in for that and allowing them to do their job. So first, figure out what you don't like to do. And then secondly, if you love ordering from Staples because it gives you a high when you get like a good deal, or you shop Staples at Amazon and you save $2 on a ream of paper, great. But once you start to get to the point where, hey, I don't need to be doing that, and even if the person doing it is not going to save $2 and you can teach them how to save $1, the idea being that you need to push yourself up and make sure that you're hiring people to do what you don't need to be doing.
Yeah, I found that to be one of the most difficult, like at growing a business. Because have you ever seen the movie Casino, where Robert De Niro, he's like, there's 3 ways to do things: the right way, the wrong way, and my way. I'm kind of like that, where like delegating is always so difficult for me. But once I started doing that, your life changes, and you have to accept that sometimes things just aren't going to be done the way that you would do them. But in the spirit of progress, you've got to kind of accept that.
Right. I mean, a whole other podcast could be like, as you start to hire people, it's not going to be done as well as you can do it. It just won't be. And there's going to be breakage. There's going to be mistakes. But if and like, that's the big back and forth with my law partner. As a perfectionist lawyer, we would be 2 schmucks in his basement still if we never took a chance and said, hey, that first attorney, not going to be as good as the guy who teaches at Harvard Law. But if we don't hire other people, it's still us. And not that you should put systems, not there shouldn't be checks and balances, but know that it won't be as good. And again, you could probably attest to this. There may be times when you hire somebody else to do it, and it takes longer for you, or you feel it takes longer because you have to sort of be there as the backstop and continue to coach, and that person quits and you have to replace somebody. But if you don't move in that direction, it will never happen.
Yeah. No, nobody loves your baby like you do, so. All right. Well, hey, Seth, thank you so much for hanging out with me. This was a lot of fun. I hope everybody got a lot out of this conversation. Definitely love to do this again sometime soon. I think we could probably talk for another 6 hours here, probably even longer than that.
But excellent. I appreciate the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what's the websites people can check you out on?
Blue Shark Digital, BLU, sharkdigital.com. Anybody who puts a URL in there, we'll run a battery of reports and come back and say, hey, this is what you're doing well. This is what you're not doing well. And as you can tell, just like Andy, I geek out on this stuff. So even if it's just a question about something that has nothing to do with our business, growing the firm, or what do you think about some web strategy? Happy to geek out anytime.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot. All right, let me end this here. So stop the recording. Thanks for listening to the Law Firm Marketing Hacks podcast. Remember to subscribe and to leave a review. Are you having trouble getting your ideal clients for your law firm? Do you want to know how to get more clients fast? Well, a lot of people don't realize that I recently released a nearly 200-page book filled with strategies to help you get more clients for your law firm fast. In fact, the book is called How to Get More Law Firm Clients Without Losing Time and Money or Getting Screwed by a Marketing Company. And I want to give you a copy completely free. Just go to lawfirmbook.com to reserve your free copy today. Just cover a small shipping and handling fee, and I'll send you a copy right to your door. It's packed with step-by-step actionable strategies that will help you get more clients. You'll learn the exact strategy that I've used to help lawyers all over the world build thriving law firms. So start getting more clients, more cases, and making more money for your law firm. Go to lawfirmbook.com to get your free book today. They're going fast, so make sure to get yours while they're still available.